and welcome. My name is Penny Meckley Porter. I'm a therapist here in Erie, PA. And today I want to talk about a really important topic. Indeed, we're going to be talking about this topic of grief for the entire month of May. And as you may know, grief is something that oftentimes we don't talk about too much, partly because it's difficult, or maybe completely because it's a difficult topic. So, we're just not used to talking about it. And so I'd like to talk about it in different kind of pieces throughout the month, and then also do kind of a mindfulness meditation each week to help you with any grief and loss that you have been experiencing. So today, really, it's kind of the grief and loss of 2020 and 2021. We're not going to deal with all of the grief and loss from this last year and a half here today, but we're going to begin talking about it, right? And you can continue processing it on your own at home. Whoops. So, healing from grief and loss starts with acknowledging the loss and its impact. So, of course, you already know that 2020 and 2021 have been very difficult for kind of a number of different reasons, okay? And so we'll talk about loss. And what I mean by loss is, well, you know what loss is, obviously, if somebody in your life dies, that's very obviously loss, and it causes grief. Well, there are many other losses that also cause grief. For example, a divorce, we could call that a death of a relationship. A breakup is also a death of a relationship. But there can be losses even about your own body, like I'm aging and maybe things aren't working as well as they used to. And I have a sense of loss about that because some part of me just expected my body would just go and be perfectly fine until I'm in my 90s, right? But so loss is kind of the death of something, or something that's just changed unexpectedly, and it's changed in a way that we didn't want it to. So of course, during this past year and a half, we've experienced so much loss. Losses related to the COVID pandemic, losses related to the killings of our African American family, friends, neighbors, loss related to kind of a sense of reduced stability in the United States and in the world, right? So we've had increased political unrest, and it's been difficult. Increased extreme weather events. There's lots of different things. We don't have time to cover all the different things that have made us feel unsteady, unstable during the last year. So really, today, I'd like you to begin acknowledging the losses that you have experienced without judging yourself, right? So often we'll say, well, I was really sad not to spend Christmas with my family, but nobody died. So, I shouldn't be sad about that because nobody's died. Even when somebody has died, we can kind of minimize our own sense of loss by saying it wasn't as bad as somebody else's. Well, sure, maybe it wasn't as bad as somebody else's, but comparing grief is an absolute no-no, because what we really want to do is acknowledge what we're going through, because as we acknowledge it and validate it, it's so much less likely to get stuck. And so we don't want to get stuck in the grief. We also don't want to get stuck with a lid on the grief. We want to be able to enter into the grief, acknowledge it, feel it, do some healing, and come out the other side. Okay, I don't mean that coming out the other side of the grief means that it never happened. No. Coming out the other side means that we've spent some time in there, that the grief could continue to keep coming back, but we have a sense of having done some healing so that we're not swallowed up by the grief constantly. But the grief, we can't really say it goes away. And the wound, perhaps we can do some healing. Perhaps my heart has a wound. because of someone who died. We can do some healing so that it's not so red and inflamed. But I'm always going to have that hole in my heart. I'll always have that scar. That was a lot of different ideas all at once. But really today, I want to help you begin acknowledging your sense of loss and the grief that comes along with it regarding the past year and a half. I'd also like to help you understand that you're not alone in your sense of loss. Oftentimes we feel alone in our sense of loss, and a big part of that is, well, there's a few different parts, but one is because as a culture we don't talk about loss that much in grief. We don't go in and talk about the difficult things that we're feeling in our heart. No, we talk about sports and clothing, and we talk about things that aren't reaching those very difficult places. Partly because it's hard to go there and hard to acknowledge it, because then we're afraid we're going to burst into tears. And indeed, you might burst into tears, and indeed, that can be a good thing. So, your sense of loss over the last year, first I'd like to say that loss and grief result in feeling many different things. I'll name a few. Overwhelm, anger, perhaps, depression, perhaps anxiety. How about fatigue? You might have noticed this early on in COVID, the sense of fatigue. Or after hearing about George Floyd's death, a sense of deep, deep fatigue. So fatigue can certainly be part of it, along with a lot of other emotions. Part of the loss over the last year is indeed even due to a sense of loss of the world as we knew it, the sense of normalcy. Maybe even a sense of safety. For me, a piece of the loss was that I had to acknowledge that I was potentially a disease vector. I don't really think of myself as a disease vector. It was difficult to acknowledge that I could make people sick, that I could kill people by not being careful. So much loss. So let's do a meditation to begin to acknowledge some of this. If you only have 15 minutes today, let's acknowledge a little bit of the loss. We don't want to acknowledge all of the loss. If you are going to, after this experience, going to get back to work, we want to touch on the sense of loss, and we want you to touch on it more deeply when you have some time to yourself, when you have support. You might need a therapist to do it. You might want a friend. You might want to begin journaling. But so today we're going to try to touch on a piece of the loss. I'd like you to close your eyes and to sit comfortably in your chair, allowing your chair to support you, allowing yourself to rest in your chair. Bringing your awareness to your breath, that place that you like. Perhaps it's feeling your chest expand and contract with each breath. Perhaps it's noticing right there at the nose the sound of your breath. the sensation of your breath. For your next 2 breaths, I'd like you to exhale extra deep. So taking your breath, exhaling a little deeper than usual. Your next breath, your inhale, and exhaling a little bit deeper again. I'd like you to feel your body in the chair. Notice the places where your body is touching the chair or couch. Noticing your feet resting on the floor. Seeing yourself resting in the chair. Seeing yourself in the chair in this room. Seeing the room where you're located in the larger building. It could be your home, it could be your office, or somewhere else. Seeing the larger building as part of a neighborhood. Knowing that there are many structures in your neighborhood, houses maybe, buildings. And then acknowledging, noticing that your neighborhood, almost envisioning, I guess, that your neighborhood is part of a larger geographic area. So we've kind of placed you in a larger geographic area. And in that larger geographic area, perhaps this very moment, are family members, perhaps friends or acquaintances, perhaps neighbors, co-workers, and people you don't know. Acknowledging that they too have gone through this last year and a half of difficulty. Bringing your awareness again back to yourself. We've kind of had your awareness on you. We've expanded it out. But once again, bring your awareness back to yourself, sitting in the chair. And now, bringing yourself to the emotions of loss and grief that you feel in your body as a result of what you have been through. Allowing yourself to acknowledge the loss. Allowing yourself to feel it in your body. There are certain places that you'll feel it. Your places are different than mine. Acknowledging that you've been through something. And the something has been a lot a lot of some things, and it feels like a lot. I will say to you right now, from me to you, that you have been through a lot. And that it has been difficult. Acknowledging that and breathing through it. Keep breathing. Maybe move your shoulders, wiggle your body. Because as you're touching on your loss, if you can, relax your body somewhat so it doesn't get all constricted. So you're acknowledging your loss. I am acknowledging your loss. You and I are connected in this moment. I have had some loss also. But we're also connected to the other people around us who have experienced loss also. We're here together. We've been experiencing some stuff together. Even if our experiences have been different, we have been experiencing various losses. Allowing yourself to acknowledge, if possible, that you're not alone. Even if you've been feeling alone, allowing yourself to feel connected to others, deeply connected, or if that's not possible, even tenuously connected, because we are interconnected. Coming back to your breath. If you'd like to stay in this meditation, of course you're welcome to. Continuing to breathe, allowing yourself to feel, and as much as you can, kind of staying in the feeling without going into the thoughts that are judgmental of yourself, the thoughts that are shaming of yourself, the thoughts that are making you feel guilty. If you stay in this meditation, trying to stay down in the emotion, acknowledging the difficulty, allowing it to pass through you, and having the utmost compassion for yourself as you're going through. Most of you are ready to wrap up. Let's focus on the breath again. Whenever you're ready to open your eyes, I would like to acknowledge that I know you have had loss. And also what I try to say each time May you be happy. May you have moments of happiness. May you be healthy. May you be safe. May you find peace. Next week, oh, I didn't print it out. I thought I did. Another piece of grief next week. And for the other weeks this month, I hope to see you back again here with me